Thank you so much for being with us today. I'd like to start off with something I'm actually really interested in when it comes to the figures in aerospace, and that's how it all started. When did you realize that aerospace was for you? Did you realize, or was it something that came along later on in life?
I would say it comes later on for me. I did not choose aerospace engineering because I want to be an astronaut or a pilot or build model airplanes. I did none of that. When I was in the last couple of years of high school, it was clear that I had an interest in technology, more than average. So an engineering degree was obvious, but I had no idea what type of engineering degree. So I visited open days. Not very specific. Wasn't fond of boats or aircraft or whatever. And then, a broad technical degree is an option. Is probably the best option. And then you have in Delft a couple of options. You have mechanical engineering, physics, or aerospace engineering. Well, my father studied mechanical engineering. My schoolmate was sitting next to all the years there went into physics, so let's do aerospace.
Yeah, let's be different.
That's the own reasoning that's behind there.
And once you got into aerospace, were there people or individuals that you really admired and you're like, okay, that's the direction I want to go in. I really like what they're doing.
Not really. I liked the combination of all the things, because in an aircraft, as in life, everything is connected to everything else. Aerodynamics is linked with structures, it's linked with propulsion, it's linked with operations. Same holds for space. Weight is even more an issue there. Right. But energy is an issue. How do you get enough energy? Because you cannot refuel it very easily. So it's the combination of it's more the integration, the designing that fascinates me, than being a super specialist on a very tiny part of the field.
So understanding how it all combines, kind of the systems engineering of it.
Yeah, the system engineering not necessarily, but the technologies, the combination of technology, and of course to do that proficiently, you need systems engineering.
Right.
But system engineering is a tool.
Okay, and on that point about not being a specialist in a really kind of niche engineering discipline, you also went and got an education in business administration? Yeah,
I also have a bachelor degree in business administration.
When did that happen? Why did that happen?
Oh, that was very interesting. When I was a student, we were building an aircraft here in the Lambach Foundation. I've been leading that project for a couple of years. And then it was also about finance, but I had no understanding at all about finance. I said, well, I need to school myself in that sense. So in the evening hours... I spent some time, a couple of years. In the end, led to a bachelor degree in business administration as well.
Very cool.
And don't do much with it, but I can recognize money now. Still don't understand it.
Yeah. And when we're talking about those studies that you took part in, as a student, do you think you were academically gifted, or do you think there were challenges that you really had to overcome? And what were those challenges, if any, that you faced?
Well, I was smart enough to finish the degree. That's clear. But what surprised me, especially in the beginning, is the math-heavy things here. Things have changed since, but when I started here in 1987, you came from high school. There you had mathematics for 4 hours a week. Those hours were not really full hours. They were 45-minute hours, 50-minute hours. Here we started with 10. We had 6 hours of calculus plus 4 hours of linear algebra from day one in year one. That was sort of a culture shock in the beginning.
I can imagine. Yeah, and was it more advanced than you would have expected, or were you kind of out of your depth, or was it at the time very linear, where it was like, okay, I can kind of grab on and keep going?
Yeah, I could follow it, but you had to work very hard, as is still now the case. Because you see a lot of gifted students, but very often you see that they were, in high school, going through very easily, didn't need to work hard. And here it's the combination of being smart enough plus the hard working. And that's where people struggle, especially in the beginning.
Okay. And is there any advice you would give to students who aren't as academically gifted, or who do find there to be difficulty in?
Yeah, well, the couple of success factors in the study. One is working hard, but also having the gift, so to say, being gifted in that sense. And if you're a bit more gifted, you maybe need to work a little bit less hard. But maybe even more important is motivation. motivation to overcome difficult times.
Right.
Because sometimes it will get difficult, sometimes it will get hard, sometimes you will fail an exam. And then somehow you have to be motivated to continue. And that motivation can come from the fact that you want to be a fighter pilot, or you want to be an astronaut in the future, or you're just fascinated by technology, or you like aircraft, or motivation has to come from somewhere. So it's the combination of being gifted, the hard working, plus the motivation.
Okay.
And of course, on our side, having a doable, a well-balanced educational program.
Right.
That's our responsibility.
Got it. And then something else I've realized is that the community is also a very important part, the type of individuals you're interacting with. What were some communities that early on, when you were studying here, you joined? You mentioned Lambach, that influenced you.
Yeah, well, that was one of the biggest one. When I was in my second year, then the next lustrum of the VSV was approaching, the 1990 lustrum, and the idea was from some of the board members of the VSV, well, let's build an aircraft.
So cool.
So cool. So then we started investigating what type of aircraft. In the end, well, somehow we struggled upon the Lambach HL2 aircraft. And then the idea was, well, let's spend a year on that and build that. Well, it was ready for the next lustrum, the 1995 lustrum. Proved to be so much incomplete, so much more difficult than you think.
Yeah. And what was that process like? Was that your first collaboration on a technical project with other students? What were the learning experiences?
Yeah, together with students. This was before the age of dream teams that just didn't exist. Staff and the faculty thought, well, these idiots are never going to succeed in that sense. Well, we'll give them some space, but that's it. Space was already scarce in those days. Now it's even more scarce. But yeah, well, just we had a good dean in those days, and he said, well, just give the students that space and let's see what happens. And that was the first time you really worked in a multidisciplinary team on an engineering project, which was very tough, where logistics and money and organization and the engineering and the manufacturing all came together. Before that, you had your classes in engineering and drawing. But that was, largely individual. Well, you work together in groups in the same room, but effectively everyone had to do the individual assignment. Projects didn't really exist like we have it now.
And would you encourage current students that are studying aerospace or any other engineering degree to try and join those communities?
It definitely helps. I think you should not necessarily take half a year or a year off for that. I didn't do that either. But in combination with, and playing a little bit with the hours you have available in the evenings, in the weekends. Watching carefully the exam breaks, of course.
And just for context, your degree when you came to study here was 5 years with an integrated master's, right? So you graduated.
There was only one degree. The bachelor-master system did not exist. There was just the ingenieur, the engineer, what you would now call a master.
And that was a 5-year track? Or?
Yeah, actually it was a bit different. It used to be a 5-year track. Then in the early 1980s, it was reduced to a formally 4-year track. But the staff here said, well, it's a 5-year track, but we had to squeeze it into, so forget about 4 years. And then later in 1994, it was formally expanded again to a 5-year track. So when I entered, it was formally a 4-year track.
Okay, gotcha. And now that you've been here for more than 25, how many years exactly?
I started working here in 1992, so I can do the math.
So now that you've been here since 1992, and you've been through the entire education program, and now, and in a sense, you are the education program. What do you think is the most important set of lessons that students should come here and learn?
Well, maybe the most important skill we teach is to learn. Because I cannot tell you what you will be doing after graduation, what type of profession you will have. Maybe the nicest example is my own father. He did a couple of years of mechanical engineering while he was working. He worked here in this faculty for a couple of years. And his profession was scientific calculator. A profession that does not exist anymore. Now you have a machine for that. You punch in the numbers and you have your answer. In those days, that didn't really exist. You had the early computers. There was a sort of what they called supercomputer in the country that was in Utrecht. And my father worked in the control and simulation department, or what's now called the control and simulation department, as scientific calculator. So the scientists thought of algorithms, There were no terminals, there were no computers, there were no laptops, there were no mobile phones. So they wrote out the algorithm. Then my father programmed it into the computer with punch cards and punch tape. He could even read that. And then it went into a computer, and then a day later or a week later, there was some answer, and then you could see all your silly mistakes, and you have to do it again. Well, the profession of scientific calculator does not exist anymore. But he earned a very decent living, I would say. He kept staying in computers. But yeah, you now become an aerospace engineer, but the profession of an aerospace engineer is very wide. I cannot tell you what you will do in 30, 40, maybe 50 years from now. So the ability, the skill to quickly adapt new knowledge, to learn, is maybe the most important thing we can teach you here. And of course, we train you on the aerospace object. This is an object-oriented engineering program. We focus on the aircraft, the satellite, the rocket, the wind turbine, whatever you think of, but it's object-oriented. And in that sense, to grasp quickly new things, difficult new things, that's maybe the most important skill we can teach you.
Okay. And for students who come out of this education and think to themselves, maybe I don't want to go into industry quite yet, I want to pursue a master's, then a PhD, then get a post-doctoral research position, what advice would you give them, specific skills, since you yourself have been involved in academia since 1992 now? What do you think were the skills that made you stand out and succeed more than,
Well, I don't really know, but if you want to study, this is the age to do it. And especially when you look into an engineering degree. Later, when you're in a company, you will probably very quickly move towards more managerial roles. Your boss will send you to a management course if needed. Your boss will not send you to another engineering course. So if you want to do the engineering, do it now. Don't stop after the bachelor, but do the master. Not necessarily the PhD. I guess more than 95% of our graduates end up in industry anyhow. But if you want to do the engineering, do it now. And if you have the time and also the finances, maybe take 1 or 2 extra courses, because now they're almost for free. They're not for free anymore.
Okay. And for those students, conferencing, going to the big conferences, being a part of the right communities like we talked about before, such as the ones that you're a part of, which is the International Council of Aeronautical Sciences, ICAS. How does being involved in those groups of individuals shape you? What has it taught you? And how does it shape, or how does it change your perspective on what academia is?
Yeah, well, when you're working in a field, in this case the aerospace engineering field, it makes sense to be member of professional societies. You have a couple of them in aerospace. You have the largest one, the AIAA, the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics. I'm a member there as well. I'm also a member of the Technical Committee on General Aviation there. And they organize large conferences. I normally cannot go to those conferences because that's always in teaching periods. But then you're still part of a community. Of course, you get the magazines, the newsletters. That helps. There's another society, there's ICAS. That is a worldwide organization. AIAA is a member of ICAS. And ICAS organizes one very large conference once every 2 years. I'm in the program committee there. So you help establish the program that keeps you also up to date. Those conferences I normally can visit because they're in September. And the academic year just started, and I don't have to lecture yet. And that keeps you up to date. But there's also a European equivalent of that, CIAS. They also organize a large conference every 2 years. And then you have a national association. So the Dutch equivalent of AIAA, which is of course very tiny compared to AIAA, is the Nederlandse Vereniging voor Luchtvaarttechniek, the Dutch Association for Aerospace Technology or Aeronautical Technology. I'm the treasurer now. And it helps to be involved in such professional societies, because then you get an overview. There's always people who organize things, which you can just visit for a reasonable amount of money. So it makes sense to be a member of it. That's why it also makes sense to be a member of the VSV, for instance, because they organize things. There's always volunteers who like to do that. And if you want to train yourself also in organizational things, you want to skill yourself, you can become a volunteer there. that helps. It makes you grow professionally. So it's very worthwhile to be a member of at least one or two of those organizations.
And speaking of these administrative roles, you are the Director of Education here at the Aerospace Faculty of TU Delft. What are the most important issues that you're currently focusing on solving in that role?
Well, let me first explain how things work.
Okay, perfect.
Basically, we have an engineering program. Actually, we have two engineering programs. We have a bachelor degree and a master degree. And in every faculty where there are engineering programs, we have 8 faculties there, there's a director of education who is responsible for both the content and the organization of the program.
Right.
So in this case, as director of education, the faculty of engineering, I'm responsible for both the bachelor and the master program in aerospace engineering. Now, I cannot organize that myself. And the interesting thing is, as a director of education, you have no staff. I'm not the boss of anyone. I'm just the boss of the program, but I'm not the boss of anyone.
Okay.
We have a support department, the Education and Student Affairs, where there's academic counselors and the international office, where there's also the Board of Examiners being supported. I make use of their staff. And there is the scientific staff, the lecturers, in the academic department, in the scientific department. So I get my staff, so to say, which is not my staff, from two directions.
Okay.
Now, furthermore, we have these two programs, bachelor and master. And for every program, there is a program director. For instance, at the moment, we're filming this. Wouter van der Wal is the program director for the master. Together, we're in the educational management team, where we just drive things, so to say, with respect to education.
Right.
So as director of education, I'm responsible for content and organizational bachelor master, but I have no staff. So my most important thing is just to walk around in the building, to talk to people, to make sure things get organized.
Okay.
We're now busy with a serious revision of the bachelor program. Yeah, there we have to have the staff who will start teaching that. I may teach one course myself, maybe two, but that's it. The rest has to come from somewhere else. So that's how things work, and that's how my work looks like.
Perfect. And speaking of the reorganization of the bachelor, what are the main focus points? Why do you want to reorganize? What do you want to reorganize? And how are you going about doing that?
Okay, well, there are 3 main reasons for doing that. I think the last major update, the program we're currently running, started in 2009. Of course, there have been a lot of tiny changes, but not a real integrated change. And we have seen over time that the educational landscape has changed. There's new teaching methods available, blended learning, online learning, that didn't really exist in those days, or not in that sense as it exists now. So that has changed. Furthermore, the aerospace landscape has changed. More focus on sustainability. We see much more activities in space. Look at what SpaceX is doing, for instance. Things really have changed from government agencies doing space to private entities doing space to the largest extent. You see also more tools coming available. AI is ramping up very rapidly. That has its consequences on education. And then the local landscape has changed. We see a need in the future for potentially more engineers. We see now that we have in the bachelor numbers fixes. This year still 440. It's not unlikely that given time, given money, given staff, given facilities, that increases to maybe 600. You need to make a program that's ready for that. We have limited facilities. You see that classrooms are getting full, especially in the first week of the lecture period. After the first week, a lot of people skip the lectures, but there's all kind of challenges there. So those 3 changes, up to the say, okay, it's now time for a serious redesign of our bachelor program.
Right. And how do you mentioned blended learning, online learning, AI. That's something that's becoming a lot more prominent now. What's the game plan when it comes to integrating that into the
that's exactly what we're discussing at the moment. Okay. We just first defined or redefined the program learning objectives, the learning outcomes. Okay. That's factually how we define what type of engineer we bring into the world. What should that engineer be able to do? What are the skills? What are the insight he or she should have? Then we defined a couple of learning lines that run through the program. Of course, there's one on knowledge, but also one on the engineering approach. How do you become an engineer? But there's also one on ethics, social and ethical behavior, for instance. Sustainability is in there. And then you need a lot of transversal skills, teamwork, presentations, report writing, and those weave into the program. So first program learning outcomes, then the learning lines with learning line teams. And now we're working on filling in the blocks, the education units, as we call them. Okay. I want to avoid the word course or practical because it is going to be more combinations of... in the current program, we separate them. Now, in truth, it's going to be more integrated. Okay. And then we're also having now the first discussion with the teams of lecturers who are going to fill those blocks.
Right.
So that's the process we're working on.
And you mentioned the type of student that this faculty wants to produce. Currently, what is that? What's the definition of the student? What's the goal?
Well, it's the engineer. I consider you, as you come in, young engineers, young professionals. Yeah. And we train you such that you have deep knowledge in the aerospace sciences, so to say. The aerodynamics, the structures, the rocket science, all these kind of things. But we also want to teach you an engineering approach. How do you approach things as an engineer? An engineer is not a scientist, but an engineer creates things. Yeah. A scientist investigates what's there. Right. An engineer is sort of magician. He or she creates things and has a lot of skills and insights. The combination thereof, knowledge plus the way how you do these things as engineers. That's why we also have the design synthesis exercise at the end, where you really create new things. That determines the bachelor engineer we deliver to the world.
Okay. And you mentioned different types of aerospace engineering. We had rocketry, satellite engineering, aviation. What research do you think right now is most important for the aerospace engineering student to be up to date with, to have their eyes out for?
Well, that depends on what your interest is.
Right.
There is no such thing where they can say, well, this is the most important. It's a kind of combination. That's why the bachelor program is also a very broad program. That's where we do more or less everything. Of course, there's always more riches, but we basically do everything. Aeronautics, space, also the new program going to be a little bit of wind energy. And in the master, you go somewhere deep. That's where you specialize. But that does not mean that you will stay there for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's just to give you skill and insight, get you some research experience. And what is important, society will tell us.
Okay. And so even from a research perspective, you don't think there are certain areas or disciplines that are more needing in terms of the amount of research that should be done?
No, I don't think you can distinguish that.
Fair enough.
Depends on what market demands, what society demands. Maybe that's even more important. Now there's a strong focus on sustainability. Yeah. We need to fix that first before we can go the next step. But still, you see that we as citizens of the world want to fly more. And there's even a tiny part of the citizens of the world who want to go into space. The question is, can we accommodate that? Do we want to do that?
And so we talked about it briefly before we started, but now we should talk about it a bit more in depth. You've actually held talks on sustainable aviation. One of the questions I had for you was, for the everyday consumer, it's holiday season right now when we're filming, getting from Amsterdam to New York might take 6 hours less if we were to use a supersonic aircraft, such as the ones being developed now. It's boom supersonic. How or why do you think the average consumer should be more focused and more concerned with sustainable aviation instead of quick aviation?
Oh, interesting question, of course. I think the average consumer does not really care. We've seen that after the corona crisis finished. You saw the enormous queues on the airports. We want to fly. We as citizens of the world just want to fly. And if you ask people, do you care about the environment? A fraction of people will say yes. But still, if they're behind the computer booking the ticket, they'll just book the ticket.
Right.
Because it's so much more convenient than trying to find a train.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that going to New York by train stops in England, I would say, and then you're screwed. But I think as a world, as a society, we have a climate issue. And of course, aviation is only a very small contributor, looking at the CO2 emissions, somewhere between 2 and 3%. If you take into account the non-CO2 emissions, it's a bit larger fraction. We need to fix that first, because you see the consequences in changes. Of course, you also need to do adaptations. That's why we're raising our dikes Otherwise, we would have wet feet in this country because we're literally we're sitting here, I think 5 meters below sea level. We're sitting in the basement. For people who don't know this, so we would drown. So there's all kinds of things we need to do. It's our responsibility, our moral responsibility, to fix that.
Okay.
If you want to go to supersonic flying, you move the opposite way. The moment you fly faster, drag goes up and you consume more fuel. So it's going the opposite way. And then you can say, okay, yes, let's use sustainable fuel. But also to fly that fast, you need to fly higher. And the higher you bring in the emissions in the atmosphere, the effect worsens. So let's first focus on fixing the first issue before we start talking about the next.
Right.
And by the way, boom and these kind of things are trying to silence the supersonic boom. That's why they're called boom. And they do that partly by aerodynamic design, but also partly by slowing down a little bit. So not flying Mach 2 like Concorde flew with Mach 1.6. So the difference doesn't really change. And the question is, can you fly supersonically over land? Probably the answer is still no. So benefits are not that large.
Right. And when we talk about sustainable aviation, what are the main or the important points on becoming sustainable? What should we be doing as an industry to achieve sustainability?
Everything.
Okay.
The simple answer is there is no silver bullet. There's not such thing like a car, put a battery in it and have somewhere a field of solar cells and it's fixed. In aviation, that's not going to work. We're not going to have an Elon Musk for the Tesla of aviation. It's not going to happen. We need to do a lot of things. We need to minimize the weight of the aircraft. That means looking into advanced alloys, composites, but also make the design lighter.
Right.
You see that, for instance, in seats, aviation aircraft seats were very luxurious in the past. Now they're very skinny things, like they're still strong enough. They're not very comfortable anymore, but you see that literally everywhere. You see that also in the aerodynamics, less drag, because effectively what we do, we emit gaseous emissions, CO2, NOx, these kind of things, water vapor, and that comes with a one-to-one link with fuel. So the most sustainable fuel is the fuel you don't need.
Right.
So by making the aircraft lighter, you need less fuel. Make it more aerodynamically efficient, you need less fuel. The moment you avoid detouring in the European airspace, finally go to the single European sky, you save another 6 to 8% again. There's all kind of things, all kind of operational things. Engines will have a major role in that thing. There's quite some things to be achieved. Going to even higher bypass ratios makes it technologically more challenging. Geared turbofans, large bypass ratios, maybe going to dual fuel, hydrogen as a fuel, etc. Plus, in the end, convert all fuel to sustainable fuel. The fuel you still need to say sustainable fuel.
Right.
But the simple answer is there is no silver bullet. We need to do everything.
Okay, so then let's talk about some specific technologies. I'd like to get your opinion on. Something that's been doing the rounds recently is General Electric's open fan concept. Have you heard about that? What's your opinion on these kind of newer? Does it actually do anything, or is it kind of just?
Actually, it's not new. It's a factory. It's a propeller engine. Sometimes they have dual rotors, counter-rotating open rotors, the CRORs as they call it. And every time there's an energy crisis, you see that coming up. Now it's more or less a climate crisis where you see that coming up. It's still technology and a difficult thing to do. Noise is for sure an issue, and of course that's as faculty we're also working on that.
You've done some work on that as well.
So that is and remains an issue. And what you also see is that airlines and actually passengers want jet speed. You don't see that many propeller-driven aircraft. The regional prop aircraft, there's not that many. People want jet speed.
Right.
So the question is, can you have the same performance with less fuel, with less noise? It's a challenging field of engineering.
Yeah. And can you explain to everyone watching how the science of bypass ratios work, just for those unfamiliar, and how that increases efficiency?
Yeah, well, bypass ratios is a fascinating thing because it's one of the very few things in aviation where by one change you have two benefits. Normally you have one benefit and one downside. This is maybe the one and only place in aviation where you have one change, two benefits. Well, what is the bypass ratio? Effectively, what an aircraft, a jet engine does, it takes in air, compresses it, then adds fuel to it, ignites that, and then you have a flow of hot, energy-rich gases that go into a turbine. That turbine is actually nothing else than a sort of a wind turbine. That wind turbine takes out a bit of energy to drive the compressor that was in the beginning of the engine. And the rest of the energy-rich gases are being converted into a jet. And that jet propels the aircraft. It's jet propulsion.
Yeah.
That's effectively what it is. Now, what you do in such a jet engine is that you create a flow of hot, energy-rich gases that's being expelled at very high speed. And that gives you the thrust. It's the amount of mass times the change in velocity that gives you the propulsive force. Now, you can play with the combination of mass and change in velocity, because it's the product of the two that gives me the thrust.
Right.
If I increase the mass flow, I can reduce the velocity, and vice versa. If I decrease the mass flow, I need to increase the jet velocity, the acceleration, the kick I give to the air. Now, in a normal, standard, straight turbojet, you have a very low or relatively low mass of air with a high velocity. In a turbofan engine, where you have actually a mix of some of the air that goes through the core, goes through the combustion chamber, becomes that hot, energy-rich flow of gases, but a larger fraction passes around it, goes through the fan. And the fan is actually nothing else than a propeller. It's a propeller in disguise, I would say. And thereby, you make this engine larger, so you have more mass, and you can do with less acceleration of the flow. And when you reduce the flow velocity, noise goes down. That goes with velocity to the power 8. That's tremendous. And it becomes more fuel efficient. So by increasing the size, so size does matter, bigger is better in this case, it makes sense because then the engine become more fuel efficient. And now modern day, the first turbojet was just a bypass ratio of 0. Nowadays, bypass ratio are in the order of 10 or a tiny bit above. And the expectation is that it can grow to even 15. Engines will get larger. You have issues with the length of your landing gear. You see that in the Boeing 737 MAX that had to be raised on the landing gear.
I was about to ask that,
so that will cost you a bit of weight, but it pays off in less fuel consumption.
Right. And so when we talk about the 737 MAX, sustainability isn't all sunshine and rainbows. There are failures that we've seen with companies trying to maybe market themselves instead of actually trying to do the engineering behind sustainability. When you see companies developing these technologies and using higher bypass ratios, what are some of the concerns you have?
Well, people have to be aware that an aircraft is still a very complicated engineering machine. It's almost rocket science, I would say. So it's still very complicated, and that requires time and money. And you have seen with the Boeing 737 MAX, it went a little bit too fast. It's a very integrated system, very complex. And some too big steps were taken, and they were not recognized on time, maybe they were recognized by the engineers, but not by the certifying staff and also the aviation authorities. So that went too fast. It's for a reason that these machines, if you look at the list price of a 737 MAX or an A320neo, you're talking about more than 100 million euro a piece.
Right.
It's really high-tech equipment.
And in general now, as we move away from sustainable aviation, what are the most, you were involved, just to give the context, in these research groups we talked about, ICAS, IAA, what are the most promising areas of research that you've seen that really give you hope for sustainability in the future?
Well, I'm an optimistic person,
good.
And I think there's a need to make it happen. What you can see is that aviation is one of the what they call hard to abate sectors. Same like international shipping. But we have to make that happen. And what I see in all those conferences is that there is an enormous amount of effort being going on. Sometimes on the tiny level to make the next aerodynamic calculation even a bit faster or more detailed. But it's the combination thereof. Again, in the big message is there is no silver bullet. So it's the combination of that should lead to the better aircraft.
Okay. And so let's do a little thought experiment here. Let's say we were to build a plane for the best case scenario in 2050 from a flight from Amsterdam to New York. What would that plane be made out of? What engines would it use? What kind of constitution would it have?
Well, if you look in the aviation in 2050, it's relatively easy to predict that.
Yeah.
That's more or less the same as we have now. The reason for that is the following. There's effectively two large manufacturers left in the world, Airbus and Boeing. Of course, you have Embraer and you have Comac. Comac will be coming, but that will take a little bit more time. So you have Boeing and Airbus left for those long-distance aircraft. And both of them have just delivered a new aircraft for that long-distance flight or are close to. The moment we're filming this, A350 is already flying for a couple of years. You have the 900 and the 1000 that are flying. And Boeing is hopefully finishing the 777X, hopefully entering into service 2027 or so.
Yeah.
Now, if you have those aircraft, have finished that development, you have spent an enormous amount of money, literally billions, many billions. You first need to earn them back. And how do you do that? By just selling aircraft. So for the first coming decades, these companies will just sell these aircraft. And once an aircraft enters service, it flies for 20-ish years. So it's very easy to predict what's there in 2050. More or less what we have now. Maybe by then they're working on a new generation, or maybe that's entering service. And that new generation will most probably be more or less lookalikes of what we have now. The configuration is rather optimized. But you will see it has become lighter, it has become aerodynamically more efficient, it has probably a larger bypass ratio in the engine. So the amount of fuel it needs has gone down. So again, the most sustainable fuel is the fuel you don't need. But the rest has to come from a sustainable aviation fuel. And for a long distance flight, that will still be kerosene or a kerosene-like, so a bio-kerosene or a synthetic kerosene.
Right.
And that's the way you can make it CO2 neutral. You still have the emissions at high altitude, so you still have the non-CO2 effects, but you can most probably make it CO2 neutral.
Right. And on that line of conversation about research, AI is becoming more and more prominent. How do you think AI will shape that type of research into sustainability?
Well, my guess is that AI is very good in recognizing patterns. So maybe by feeding it with enough data, which will cost energy, of course, you need large data centers for that. But maybe by feeding it with enough data, you can recognize patterns we don't see yet to further optimize things.
Right.
AI is not really creative because it's a collection of everything we know so far. So we still need the bright young inventors and maybe also the bright old inventors to come up with new bright ideas. And then it's probably still a lot of hard engineering work to make it work, make it reliable for a duration of 25 years service life of an aircraft in all circumstances of the globe. So in the desert in Africa, plus 50 degrees centigrade, up until cruise altitude, minus 50, 60, 70 degrees centigrade, standing still in an icing situation and then press the button and start the aircraft. So reliability requires a lot of engineering and of course a lot of maintenance, and that's always underestimated, undervalued. Actually, it's the place where the most money in aviation is being earned. That's in maintenance.
In maintenance? Yeah.
If you flying an aircraft has a very tiny margin. If you look worldwide, the average net profit an airline makes on selling a ticket is less than 10 euros. And that's where you have to pay your innovation from, of course, and you have to pay your shareholders. So flying an aircraft is not very financially effective. Selling a new aircraft is more effective, but the most money is being earned in maintenance. And you know for sure an aircraft will need maintenance for decades.
Right.
So if you want to find out something smart, maybe you should go into maintenance.
And then we talked about the contrast. Boom Supersonic is an American company. Where is most of the sustainability research coming from? Is it really spread up by region? Do you see a bigger focus here in Europe?
Yeah, you see a bigger focus in Europe. Had to do with the previous European Commission. What you see, for instance, we had Commissioner Frans Timmermans, who did this, he designed this Green Deal. And he also saw, how sectors are now implementing that.
Right.
In the European scene, there is an advisory group of all kind of stakeholders, ACARE. I'm also working in that group. They have written a strategy document, Fly the Green Deal, to tell what you need to do in the 2030 frame, then the 2050 frame, to see where you need to go. So you see more focus in Europe on that. The US, especially under the current president, doesn't really help. On the other hand, they also feel the fact that fuel is expensive. Even if you would not do it for sustainability, you would do it for cost. And that's why fuel reduction or fuel consumption reduction always has been a driver in aviation, because the stuff is bloody expensive.
And now, getting into the closing section, what are some recommendations? You talked about the advice you have for students, but for those listening who are interested in pursuing anything aerospace related, what are some recommendations you would have in terms of literature? Maybe we talked about societies or communities you can join that want to grow and kind of explore what's in aerospace for them.
Literally everything, so to say. Well, it's there. Knowledge is literally at your fingertips on your keyboard. There's so many good information on the internet. YouTube videos where people do things. It's on television, especially when you go to television shows like Air Crash Investigation. You can learn a lot from that, because that's one of the fun things. Quote unquote, in aviation. When things go wrong, we investigate that, and the investigators write the scenario for those TV shows, and of course they dramatize things a little bit, but you can learn from that. But you can also learn by becoming a member of an engineering society, nationally or internationally. There's even student memberships for AIAA, for instance. If you're a young researcher, you can go to this conference with a discount. You can use, as a student, join the VSV and the activities, become a volunteer there. You can be a member of the Dutch Association for Aerospace Engineers. There's also a space association. There's so much opportunities, literally at your fingertips.
Exactly.
Don't sit behind your computer and play games. Do something else, I would say.
And there's also online courses that TU Delft has provided. You've also participated in making them. What has that process been like when you're deciding how to...
You have all kind of online opportunities nowadays. That's one of the things in which the educational landscape has changed. You have the massive online open courses. TU Delft is a big player in that via the edX platform. And we also, as faculty, organize professional further training, prof eds, they're called. You have to pay for that. Still reasonably priced, I would say, for your professional engineers who still want to do some additional updating in their engineering career.
Okay.
And then, basically on demand, there's development going on.
And is there any final message you want to leave with the audience? Any book recommendation, quote, or anything that has helped you and you want to share with those listening?
Well, maybe just read a book. Not only use the internet and train yourself to be critical.
Okay.
Because when we're looking now in changing the curriculum, we also... use questionnaires to see what people think is important. We also do that in the framework of the European network of aerospace universities. We have a network called the Pegasus Network. I'm representing the TU Delft in that network. We also organize student activities there. But we also have in-depth discussions on educational programs. And we always talk about aerodynamics and structures and all these kind of things. But one thing that always pops up in questionnaires as being important is critical attitude.
Okay.
Be critical. And it becomes more difficult with AI, because AI spits out anything you like, but training critical attitude. And nowhere in educational programs we teach critical attitude. There's no course on critical attitude. We train it throughout the program.
Right, passively.
It should come naturally, but the question is, does it? And maybe that question has become more important than it is now. So maybe a clear message for everyone, for all the students, all the viewers at home, I would say, train your critical attitude. Don't be satisfied too soon, too early. Just do the next step, check something else, read a book, find an article, ask a friend, ask a colleague, go to those professional societies, become a member, become active.
Right.
So that will help you. Critical attitude is maybe also one of the most important things we can teach students.
Perfect. Well, Professor Melkert, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone listening. That'll be it from us.